Hi everyone, this is Carmela with Equine Helper, and today I wanted to give you 16 tips for owning a horse on a budget. So all the tips I'm about to give you I have personally followed, or I've known someone who's followed them. I moved away from home when I was 18 years old, and I was paying for school and I was paying for my living expenses, but you know, you need a horse. So in order to afford my horse at the time, I had to make sure that I budgeted correctly in order to afford all the expenses that comes with horses. So here are my 16 tips for owning a horse on a budget. My first tip is to choose a self-care boarding option. So self-care board is when you basically just pay someone to keep your horse on their land. It differs from a full care board because in full care or pasture board, the barn staff will usually take care of the daily needs of your horse. However, with self-care, you're required to do everything. You know, you have to feed every day, you have to turn out, you have to water, blanket, you know, everything that comes with caring for the horse. And so you're able to save a lot of money this way. One thing that may be hard about self-care board is that the time commitment that you have to commit to going out to the barn. You know, with full care board, you have the barn staff taking care of your horse, so you really don't feel the pressure to go out there as much as you would need to with the self-care board. So what a lot of people do at self-care boarding stables is the boarders will band together, and you can just kind of make a deal with the other boarders on this day's, you know, look out for my horse. On this day, I'll be up and I'll look out for your horse. So that's just a way to make the situation easier and be able to afford a cheaper boarding option for your horse. My second tip is to trade work for boarding costs. So I did this when I was young. I had a horse, and in order to get a cheaper board rate, they needed help at the stables that I boarded at, so I would just work for my board. And so it's an easy way to cut down on boarding expenses, and it also shows you all the responsibility that a barn manager has to deal with. So in the future, if that's something you want to do, you get that experience. If the barn you board at isn't looking for help at the moment, I'm constantly seeing ads for help wanted at boarding stables, and they're always advertising a reduced rate on board. So what I would recommend is just checking out some of the local social media groups. That's where I see them most posted, and see if you can find something in there. My third tip is to consider a half lease. So a half lease would mean that you would lease your horse out to someone else a few days a week. And I understand. If you're a horse owner, the idea of sharing your horse with someone may not be the best feeling, but it can help cut your cost in half. What I would usually do if I were to do this is I would charge the person who's leasing my horse half of the horse's expenses. That way, you know, I can be guaranteed that board will be covered halfway each month. You know, vet bills, farrier bills, all that stuff is going to be covered, and I'm going to just have to meet half of the pay on that. So that's a great option. Once again, I know it's not probably the first option you think of, but it can save you a lot of money. And if there's days that you can't get out to the barn, you know, it's not going to be something you have to worry about because this other person will just care for your horse on those other days. My fourth tip is to offer your horse to be used for lessons or shows. So this is another thing I did growing up, is I would offer my horse to be used at summer camps that were at my boarding stable. I would offer my horse to be used in show classes at shows or with lessons, and that way, number one, your horse is getting great experience dealing with different riders, and number two, this can help you make some money or cut back on costs. What I would usually do if someone wanted to use my horse in a class at one of the shows, I would say, okay, that's fine. Instead of paying me, why don't you just pay for one of my classes? And that way I got to basically show for free. So this is another option that is a great way to get your horse experience and to maybe cut costs and show for free. Tip 5 is to do group lessons instead of private lessons. So private lessons are nice because you get one-on-one attention from your instructor. However, they usually are more expensive compared to group lessons. So what I would recommend is scheduling group lessons from now on. So in a group lesson, you're going to be riding with more riders while your instructor is watching all of you and giving you tips as you go. So a few benefits to this is, number one, it's cheaper. Number two, your horse gets used to riding with groups of other horses. And number three, you also get to just learn from other riders and see how they do things, and that's always a great opportunity to have. My 6th tip is to take your horse's shoes off, but only if they can handle it. The cost of shoeing a horse is way more expensive than simply getting their feet trimmed if they're barefoot. So if your horse has good, strong feet, you may want to take their shoes off. So that can save you about $50 or more. You just want to make sure that your horse can handle having their shoes off. Some horses, their feet are really soft and the shoes kind of help give them that traction and that protection against rocks or things like that. So make sure your horse can handle it, but definitely consider taking those shoes off. My 7th tip is to buy used tack. So this is something I've always done. I don't think I've ever gotten a brand new saddle just because I'm a bit of a cheapskate, but there's nothing wrong with that. So you can find used tack basically anywhere. There's a bunch of discounted used tack stores where, you know, they'll get the tack in, they'll inspect it to make sure it's quality and that it's safe to use, and then they'll sell it at a discounted rate. So, great opportunity, not spend so much on tack, which can cost almost, you know, it can cost a lot of money. Tack is a lot of money. So you can save a bunch of money and you can get good quality stuff that actually, you know, it would be worn in compared to riding in a new saddle that may need to break in a bit. So always consider this a great way to save money. My 8th tip is to learn basic medical skills. So before I go any further, just a disclaimer, veterinarians are the final say about anything health related to your horse. They are trained, they are professionals, they know what they're doing. However, I've experienced some instances where I can administer medical aid to my horse in cases where the injury is not that serious or it's just kind of some minor thing going on. So if you learn how to do some just simple medical skills, you can save yourself a lot of money rather than, you know, having to call the vet, having to pay for a vet call for the vet to come to your stable, and having to pay for the supplies and all that stuff. So some of the things I recommend to learn is administering vaccines. This can save you a ton of money. You can go buy vaccines at the farm store for 20 bucks, or at least I do. So great way to save money. You can learn how to wrap a horse's leg, you know, if they have swollen legs or things of that nature. Learning to wrap the leg will do good. You can learn to treat puncture wounds and abrasions and cuts and things like that. You know, other things are rain rot, pulling thistles out of the horse's mouth, just anything that is kind of simple that you don't really need a vet to do unless it's serious. So once again, that'll save you a ton of money and you'll also learn some great skills for horse care. Tip number 9, if you do have to call the vet, maybe see if you can split the vet call fee with some other boarders. So a vet call is what the vet charges you to come out to your stable. So usually the farther you're located from the vet's office, the more the bill will be. But there usually is like a set minimum for the vet call. So what I usually do if I need to get the vet out for my horse, I'll check with some boarders first to see if they may need the vet for anything. And then if they do, I'll say, okay, well, let's just split the vet call. So that'll probably eliminate your bill almost in half, just because the vet call is a big portion of what your vet bill is going to be. So always consider this, always check with your boarders. You may be doing them a favor as well. My 10th tip is to buy hay in the summer. So I've experienced going to buy hay in the winter, and it's just been a mess. Because by the time you purchase hay in the winter, all the hay has been bought up. The only thing left is going to be bad quality hay. So basically you're going to be paying a ton of money to get bad quality hay because it's the only hay left. So what I recommend is buying hay in the summer right after the first few cuttings. That way prices will probably be lower and there's an abundant supply of good quality hay. And this will save you a lot of hassle, believe me. So buy hay in the summer. Tip 11, buy seasonal items in the off season. So with any consumer, if you go to buy seasonal items during the season, it's going to be a lot more expensive. It's like buying wrapping paper around Christmas time. You're going to spend way more money compared to buying wrapping paper in the summer. So this is something to keep in mind. You can also find like great deals and clearance items on off-season items. So think about like a winter horse blanket. I would start planning to purchase that in the summertime. And just look around because you can probably find some really great deals. Also like fly spray, water heaters, just anything that would relate seasonally to horse care. That's what I would recommend. So check that out. Tip number 12, watch for clearance items on popular online tack shops. I love doing this. I could spend hours doing this. All I do, go to the website, click the clearance tab, and I just scroll through, and they have some great deals, let me tell you. And so, you'll probably see those off-season items on these clearance lists, and you can get great deals, like way discounted prices. So I would recommend doing this. It's a great way to save money and get things at a cheaper rate. Tip 13, buy anything other than name brand. So horse people love their name brand stuff, and I can't blame you because name brand stuff is quality. Look at the Charles Owens helmets, look at the M. Toulouse saddles. Man, those are comfortable. But they cost a lot of money. So what I'll do, I'll usually look for off-brand things, or probably brands that aren't as well known as those really expensive ones. And this way, it's just gonna be discounted prices, a lot cheaper. Probably not as quality as those name brand items, but you can get these items for way cheaper. So this is what I recommend. There's a lot of great items out there that aren't name brand and that I use a lot. So just be on the lookout. Don't discriminate against off-brand things because, they work just as fine as name brand. My 14th tip I've kind of touched on throughout this video is to join some online groups. So I completely rely on my Facebook horse groups for my local area. There are so many stuff that's posted on there. You can find tack for so cheap. You can find, horse care products like winter blankets, halters, anything you basically need. So I'm totally for this tip. Another thing you can do, if you have a horse question, you can post it on this online group and just kind of see what other people say and what they recommend, and you can find some great things. I was one time looking to trailer my horse back across the country, so I posted in my online group for shipping services, and I got a bunch of notifications back, just people recommending some great companies. So it's a great thing to do. Check it out. Stick with your local horse people. Tip 15 is to properly maintain your tack and your supplies. Like anything, the better you maintain your tack, the longer it will last. And tack pieces can last a lifetime. I've seen saddles that are like 70 years old and they're still ridden in and they're fine. So if you really maintain your tack, it can go a long way. If I had to purchase a new saddle every few years, oh my gosh, that would be so much money. But if I just maintain the one I have, I don't have to go purchasing new stuff. Just like with bridles, those straps are easily, they easily wear and they can snap easily. So just make sure you're cleaning your tack, shampooing it, conditioning. Watch out for the weather. If your saddle gets rained on, the rain can dry out the leather, so just make sure you condition it after stuff like that. And also your supplies, clean your supplies. I like to clean my brushes a few times a year. I know that doesn't even sound like that much, but brushes get caked with mud, so I'll just, take dish detergent and scrub them off and scrub my buckets, and hoping that they'll make them last longer and I don't have to go buy new ones. So maintain your tack. You know, that's for your own safety. I don't want a piece of leather snapping while I'm on my horse, you know? And it's also just so you don't have to spend so much money repairing everything. Tip 16, study alternatives and natural remedies. So this can be great for a number of reasons, but before I go further, once again, just a disclaimer, your veterinarian knows best. Talk to them if you have any doubt about natural remedies. You know, they have other stuff that can work for your horse. But I like to use natural remedies because they are cheap. They're cheap, cheap, cheap. So I always have a thing of saline solution, apple cider vinegar, iodine solution. I just keep that in my tack box. Those stuff work great for, you know, a lot of horse illnesses or injuries, and I can go buy it at Walmart for like $3. So you save a bunch of money compared to buying commercial horse products or medication that can cost a lot of money. And a lot of horse people love the natural remedies because it keeps you from putting a lot of unwanted chemicals into your horse. You know, chemicals can cause a lot of weird side effects and kind of mentally imbalance your horse. So natural remedies are great for a number of reasons. I always tell people to look into them. I use them. I think they're great. Also studying alternatives. I laughed because I learned that you can use Ajax dish detergent as shampoo for your horse. And I'm like, what the heck? But it actually worked great. I use it today. And so I can buy Ajax dish detergent for like, once again, $2 at Walmart compared to buying $20 horse shampoo at the farm store. So just things like that. It can save you a bunch of money, and it's just being conscientious of what's going on your horse. You know, I don't want those chemicals. Time for some frequently asked questions. So our first question is, how do you get a horse for cheap? Well, there are many options for this. A few things first. Horses will probably be more expensive if they're registered, if they have good bloodlines, and if they're trained really well. So sometimes you may just have to compromise those options in getting a cheaper horse. I've never spent over like $600 on a horse just because I always buy them unbroke. But you can also find some really nicely trained horses if you look hard enough, and you can find them for cheap. Where I live in this country, there are kill lots. Kill lots are where the horses go before they're shipped to slaughter in Mexico or Canada. And there's a lot of people trying to rescue those horses before they get shipped. And there are a lot of nice horses on those lots, like really nicely trained horses that are registered, that have great pedigrees. I actually had a horse from a kill lot that its pedigree was insane, and it was a nice registered Corab. So always look for those things. You know, visit rescue sites, see what they have. A lot of rescues will do training with the horses just to make sure that they can find them a good home and that the horse and the rider will get along. Never underestimate a rescue horse or a kill lot horse. You can get them for cheap, and you can find some great things on there. Second frequently asked question, do you have to be rich to own a horse? The answer is no. I am not rich. I'm not rich, but I own a horse, and I'd like to think I've been pretty successful. I haven't really struggled with anything financially with my horse that's come up, just because I've really been determined and set in my budget. I know what I can and cannot afford, and I also know how to take the precautions to avoid more expensive situations. You don't have to be rich to own a horse. You just have to budget. You just have to keep in mind what you can and cannot afford. So if you're interested in seeing a full breakdown of the expenses that it takes to own a horse, we have an article on our website that can show you these things. So if you go to equinehelper.com/expenses, you will get a breakdown of medical bills, of care costs, you know, boarding, show costs, all that good stuff. So you know exactly how much it may cost you to own a horse. Once again, we appreciate you watching, and this is Carmela with Equine Helper. Happy trails!